Good evening. My name's Martin. I'm an alcoholic. That's maybe all you'll understand. I'm from the south side of Denver. I'm so happy to be here. This is one of my favorite towns in America. This and all the rest of them. No, really, this town. I had a great friend came from this town, and he was just such an influence in my life. But I want to get the formalities out of the way. I would like to thank Patrick for asking me to speak. And in saying that if I'm not any good, his fault. Don't blame me, because I'm sensitive, as you'll find out. And I would like to thank Jen and Chris. I was with them for 9 hours today. Well, it was only an hour, but it felt like 9 hours, you know what I mean? My God. Thanks so very much for your hospitality. You know, when Patrick asked me to speak here, he didn't ask me to come and tell my story. What he asked me to do was try and carry this message, as it says in step 12. And so that means that wherever in my story pertains to alcoholism is in, and wherever doesn't is out. You see, I'm a guy who believes in the singleness of purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I believe if we don't have it, we're less effective for the new guy or the new gal who truly is alcoholic like me. I need to tell you up front too, I never even smoked a cigarette in my life. Never. I've never done any drugs, ever. Just haven't. It's just not a part of who I was. You know, I think it's because I'm Scottish and I've seen the prices of them. I thought, oh, I'm not doing that. So, you know, the fifth tradition may be the most important tradition there is, because it defines who we are. And without us, there's no me. This doesn't work unless we're all involved in it. It just doesn't. You know, I heard that girl speak there. That was fabulous. Thanks so very much. That was great. Without us, the me's take over, and there'll be no us. That's where it is for me. You know, and I believe that Bill Wilson was a visionary for a while. For a while. I think he was inspired. I think God touched him and didn't touch us. I knew a guy who knew him real well, and he says in all aspects, Bill was an ordinary guy until we started talking about AA. Then you knew that the hand of God had been on him and not on you. And so I believe that. And you know, when Carl Jung was talking to Roland Hazard in Geneva and says to him, you're done. It's over for you. You better get a bodyguard or lock yourself up, because you're going to die. He says, is there no hope? He says, well, here and there in history, there's been instances where men and women have had tremendous displacements of their spiritual values. We call it phenomena, and they have got sober. He was talking exactly what happened to Bill Wilson in Towns Hospital. But the difference with Bill Wilson is he decided to do something about it. That means in history, people had got that gift from God and never done anything with it, kept it for themselves and just disappeared. But no, Billy, he thought, I'm not just going to reproduce this, I'm going to mass produce this. Hence tonight, there's more people in this hall tonight than there was in AA in 1938. You think about that, you know, and that's why guys like me get to be here. You know, and I have a set of experiences related to my alcoholism that I hope it makes it plain to you that I'm alcoholic. And if you can identify, because identification is a fundamental element of alcoholism. Without it, there's nothing. You know, like I had great people, give me lectures. You should. As soon as it said, the first 2 words were out, you should, I went, it's over. It's over for me. I was in AA one time and a guy was giving me a lecture and I says, hang on, buddy. In the book, it says, no more lecture to be endured. That's what it says. I says, I remember the last guy to give me a lecture. I even remember his name. He says, oh yeah, what was his name? I said, Dad. I'm a grown man. I don't do lectures. But I'll tell you the difference between people in Alcoholics Anonymous and people who give me lectures. I know as soon as I talk to an alcoholic that there's something about him or her that is the exact same as me. And so I have to go back to when I was 11 years old. I didn't start drinking at 11 years old. In Scotland, where I come from, Glasgow, Glasgow's a beautiful town. It really is. It's some of the greatest architecture in the world. I was a stonemason to trade, and it was fabulous doing that there. It was fabulous. And I didn't realize I was working with the best guys in the world. I didn't know that because they were the guys I worked with. I had no other experience of anybody till I started to travel. But you know, if you wanted to be alcoholic, you go to Glasgow for 6 months. It's over. You will come back convinced. I was born there. I was born into a good home. God, my people were good people. And I'm not saying that to exonerate them. I'm not. They were just good people. I had an aunt who had this illness. And she came in with her kids one day, 4 kids. And she says to my mum, I'll be back in 2 hours. My mum says, okay. And she never came back for 7 years. Because we're time challenged. You know, I'll be right back. I'm just gone for a couple of weeks, couple of months. Of those 8 kids in the house, I'm the only one who has this allergy. They're successful people, and I don't mean financially successful, although my brother is, and I'm very close to him. Very close. But I mean emotionally successful people. I wasn't. I was different. So when I was 11, I used to go and see this soccer team, and it'd be like you was going to see the Denver Broncos every week, 42 weeks a year. Could you imagine if the Broncos played 42 home games? It'd be great, wouldn't it? I was on my way home this Saturday, and I was with my buddy Joe. And Joe is as far away as Alex, and I see the car coming. And I go and try and get him, and I don't. And the car hit him at 60 miles an hour. And the damage it done to that boy's body was unbelievable. As he passed me, I get drenched in his blood. I'm 11. Now today, we would have trauma counselors, and we would have psychotherapists talk to a wee boy like me. But we didn't have that then. Do you know what we got? Shh, go away. Because that's all they had. You know, I came from a family where we brushed stuff under the carpet. In fact, we brushed so much stuff under the carpet, we were using the carpet for a coffee table. Right? We never told anybody anything, ever. I have a secretive type of nature. If you tell me a secret, I will never tell anybody. I'll blackmail you, but I'll never tell anybody else. Just joking. Just joking. I was 11. Saturday afternoon at 5:15, Joe gets killed. He gets buried out of Immaculate Heart of Mary Roman Catholic Church on a Thursday in a Requiem Mass. I still haven't said a word. I'm in shock. I'm a wee boy. And I'm sitting outside the tenement where we lived, and we lived in a rough neighborhood. In fact, if you look up Wikipedia and you type the neighborhood I was brought up in, it says the most feared neighborhood in Europe. It was tremendously violent. But it's no part of my alcoholism, because I grew up with guys that weren't alcoholic. And I'm sitting outside, and his father came up, and his father's just lost his boy. And his father's drunk the way we get drunk. Not the way my dad gets drunk. My dad sings. My dad comes in and hands the wages in, not this guy. And I'm sitting outside the tenement, and he comes up and he's drunk, and he looks at me and he said, "It should have been you." I'm 11. And because of that nature I have, I never told anybody. Because if I had told anybody, John Connolly would have been in a lot of trouble. I come from a rough family. I need to be honest, some rough men in my family. And I said nothing. And so from I was 11 till I was 13, I carried that child's death on my shoulders. and that's too much for a wee boy to carry. And then eventually somebody says to you, here, try this. And I got a drink. In Glasgow, where we lived, there was 5 whiskey bonds within a mile and a half of where I lived. It was like living in heaven, you know. And whiskey bottles kept jumping over the walls, and we kept catching them. You know, I could have played wide receiver for the Denver Broncos when I was 12. But see, when I took that drink, I didn't know I had the allergy. All I knew is when I got that drink, I got relief. Because I didn't realize I felt bad until I felt good. Because I had felt bad for so long, I thought that's how I was always going to feel. And I thought, I'll just have to get through this. I never had any of these deep understandings that I hear people at the podium say, well, when I was a child, my mother managed my life. My mother said jump and we said how high. I didn't have that kind of awareness. I just knew I never felt good. And so I got a drink and gosh, I felt good. But you know what the drink is for us? See, that allergy we have is like a light switch. You turn it on. And it isn't until you turn it on you realize there's no off. That's it. You're done. You're done. And that was it for me. Now, I was an alcoholic at 13. I had a few drinks, right enough, but I wasn't an alcoholic. Because I think I define myself an alcoholic the way they do in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, where it says we are men and women who have lost our ability to control our drinking, which means really you have to have some ability to start with. Now, I have another condition that I don't talk about, but it gives me a tremendous capacity to drink. God, I like drinking, you know. And so 13, I start drinking. 15, I start running around in the gangs in Glasgow. And it wasn't like 8 or 9 kids on a street corner. I remember being in a gang fight in Circuit Hall Street, and there was 1,000 kids in it, and 3 of them got killed. That's what it was like when I was a kid. And at 17, I remember my dad's name was Jimmy. I called him Jimmy his whole life. My dad had won a really big medal, the one below the Victoria Cross during the war. And he was a guy I used to say, I was scared of my father. I used to say, guys, I'm scared of my dad. But I wasn't scared of my father. I respected and loved my father. But I didn't come from a place you could say, oh, I love you. If I had said to any of my friends, I love you, they would have stuck a knife in me, you know, or something else. just saying, you know. So for me, it just never, but I respected my father. I really respected and loved this little guy. And I remember him saying to me, come here, look out there. Look out the window. He says, out there is the 1970s. In here, it's the 1940s. It's my house and my rules. You step out of line one more time, you're gone. And I'm thinking, my mother will never I'm the youngest in my mom will never let him throw me out. That was 49 years ago. I've never been back. He'd had enough. And I came home one day and he says, come here. He went in his pocket and he pulled out a key and he says, here. And there was an address on the key. And I moved. My father wasn't a guy who argued. He had been a chief petty officer in the Navy, highest on the roster. So he either gave orders or took orders. He didn't know how to communicate. And when he gave you an order, you done it. And so he said, you moved, and I moved. And I moved into this apartment that nobody in the slum wanted. You can imagine what it was like. But because I'm entrepreneurial, which is Glasgow for being a thief, if you leave something down, I borrow it. Until I can sell it, of course, right? So I had this little apartment, fabulous, but this is how I drink. I don't know how anybody else drinks. I'm not here to tell you about your drinking. I'm here to tell you about mine. I would get a good wage on a Thursday night, plus whatever money I could gather the rest of the week. And by a Sunday morning, I'm broker than the 10 Commandments. I've never got anything. I've got nothing. I don't even look anymore. And I would go to my window and I'd look down at my mum and dad's house and I would wait and wait and wait till Jimmy left. And as soon as he left, I'd get my laundry, down to my ma's, My mum would do the laundry. She would iron my laundry. She'd make me up sandwiches for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and put the bus fare in them. I was telling that story at an AA meeting one time, and this girl came up to me. I thought she liked me. She was actually just mad. She said, "Your mum's an enabler." I thought she said an enforcer. She was that too. I said, "Yeah, you better believe it." My ma was like everybody's ma where I came from. My ma would have stood in front of a firing squad for me, and I would have let her. That's the way it was when I was a kid. And I came into my father. I was good at the school. I was really good at the school. I've got a fabulous memory, which is a detriment, of course. You know what having a great memory means? You know what it means? If you resent somebody 30 years later, it was like it was yesterday. Don't do it. So what happens is I get through the school, I get through the City and Guilds craft and advanced craft, and I'm doing great at the job. It's a good job. I get on with the guys, you know, and I said to my dad, "I'm finishing my apprenticeship early next week." He says, "Oh, that's good." I should have said nothing. So I come in the next week, next Sunday, and I get in the hall with my laundry bags, and you know when something's wrong. And I turn around and Eddie's standing, the wee man. He says, "Come here, you. You're moving." I said, "Jimmy, I moved 2 years ago." See, my father had thrown me out thinking I would grow up. And what he really did was open a cage and let a pit bull out without a collar. That's what he really did. I just didn't have the capacity to grow up. And I think by the time I was 17, I was almost beyond recall. But certainly at 19, I'm done. And he said, "You're moving." I said, "I moved 2 years ago." He said, "No, you're moving countries." What? He says, he went in his pocket and he took, my mum's off what they call the Black Irish. You know, she's short black hair and robin blue eyes and skin like tissue paper. She was really a good looking old girl, you know. And he showed me a photograph of my mum. He said, "Look at that." And my mother was 46 in that photograph when I was 13. And she looked like she was 30. And then he took another one out and he said, "Look at that one." And in 6 years, my mother had aged 35 years. He said, "You've done that." And what I'd done to my father, I put him in a position where he had to help his son or his daughter or his wife, because one of them's going to die. I'm killing her. I don't know I'm killing my mother. I don't know that. I'm not aware enough of that. My mother's breaking her heart all the time. Because you see, I have an illness that once it extracts everything I've got, it starts to extract it from the people who love me. And they pay until they've nothing left to pay with. That's what happened to me. So I was going to come to America, to New York City, and seemingly it's very hard to get in here. Just saying. I was going to go to Australia, and my mum says, "He goes to Australia, I'll never see him again." And I came to Canada. God, I like Canada. Oh, what a nice country. Nice people. I got an older sister there who's quite wealthy. You know why she's wealthy? Because her and her husband went to work. Do you know she worked in a company that worked 5 days a week? I never worked a Monday till I sobered up. You know, like people say, "Oh, I quit the job before I get fired." Not me, you had to fire me. I had a buddy of mine let me go one time, and you know what he says to me? He says, "Martin, I know you think this company can't survive without you, but as of tomorrow, we're going to find out what that's like." I was drunk all the time. And so I go to my big sister, and my brother-in-law takes me to the basement. Now, I hope there's some Al-Anons in here. I love the Al-Anons. I love the Al-Anons. They're just the world's best people. They really are. And you know, you hear alkies say all the time up here, "Well, alcoholics are smarter than the average people." Average what? Average dead people. You know? The Al-Anons just kill themselves laughing. We are not smarter than the average people. But what we are is we are more intuitive than anybody. And I'll tell you how the intuition works for me. I go to my sister's house. I'd never been in a house like my sister's. I had never been in a house like my sister's when the people who owned it were in too. And my brother-in-law says, come here, I want to show you something. And he took me down the stairs to the basement, and he had a bar in the basement. A bar. I mean, he didn't have 2 bottles of whiskey and 6 cans of beer. That'd have been me and Patrick for a few drinks, then go out. He had a bar that had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bottles of booze. When they went on holidays, they brought the booze back as mementos. Who does that? How can people do that? Let me tell you, duty-free booze is for when you get cut off on the plane, you drink your duty-free. That's what that's for. Not them. And this is what happens. My big brother-in-law puts his arm around me, and right away, I know they haven't told him about me. He's another innocent bystander. And this is what he said to me: help yourself. I never mean to be rude here. One of the things that bothers me the most in Alcoholics Anonymous today is the lack of etiquette. When people think it's okay to swear in front of the ladies, it's okay to swear after we've invited God into the meeting. Well, for me, it's not. It's not okay to swear. But I'm going to tell you, when my big brother-in-law put his arm around me and said, help yourself, you know the feeling I got? You know the first time you had sex? Well, with somebody else. That was the feeling. And I just started drinking, because I'll tell you what my favourite drink is by the time I'm 19 and 20. My favourite drink is, what have you got the most of? I never ever drank for pleasure. I don't understand that. That's a foreign. Like, I would go after work with guys and they'd have 2 beers and say, oh, well, I need to go home for supper. Supper? They've got pickled eggs here. They've got pretzels. Supper. Supper here. I could never understand guys that do that. My brother-in-law comes off the phone one time, and I know he's been talking to Jimmy, because he puts the phone down and he says, come here, you. I said, moving. He said, moving. My brother-in-law and sister worked too hard for what they got to give it away to somebody like me. And that's the truth. And I would have took it all. Half measures availed me nothing. I never even heard it before. And I went from Toronto to Hamilton. And Hamilton is like Pittsburgh or Gary, Indiana. It's a steel town. And you know, when you go to a new town, I'm sure there's a lot of transient people here that drank. When you come here, the first thing you've got to do is find a new bar, a local. And my criteria for a local is they take a check, post-dated. They let you run a tab, and you can never be barred. And if that's, I'm in. And there was a bar in like that in Hamilton. It was called the Jockey Club. Now, let me describe the Jockey Club just quickly. A Friday night, it was a bucket of blood. It was great. I loved it. It was like Glasgow. But on a Saturday night, it was wall to wall to wall women. It was like Club 54. And you see, I'm not much to look at. Look at him. Big, handsome guys. Look at them all, eh? But I got this. I got the accent. And when a girl has a couple of rums and coke, and I can really dance. I had 2 older sisters who were champion ballroom dancers, so I could dance. So I could say to a girl, excuse me, would you like to dance? And really dance. So I remember going into the Jockey Club one night, and I was so drunk, I thought nobody would think I was drinking. Have you ever been that drunk? I was like that for 12 years. And again, and I see this blonde in the corner, and God, she's good looking. She's really good looking. And I say to my cousin Eddie, who's one of those guys that can have 4 bottles of beer and leave. I said, Eddie, look at that wee blonde. I'm going to ask her to dance. He starts laughing. He says, she'll no dance with you, Martin. I says, why not? He says, this is Saturday night, 9 o'clock. You've been drinking since Wednesday. So? And I got with this little blonde. My God, she got better looking and she had those faraway blue eyes, you know, like she shouldn't be in this bar, is what I knew. Like she was with a friend. And I got with this little girl, and I say to her, my best Sean Connery, I says, excuse me, would you like to dance? She says, oh yeah. You know what I should have said to Cheryl? Excuse me, would you like to join Al-Anon for the rest of your life? Because that's what she had to do. In order to save herself and the children, she had to join the Al-Anon. I married that girl. In fact, wait, I tell you what she's like now. We're 45 years married in November. 45. So for you who haven't got there yet, the stone for a 45-year wedding anniversary is a sapphire. And like, I'm Scottish. Sapphire sounds expensive. You know, like they say the Scots people are cheap. I'll tell you a story. The other night, me and the wife were passing this beautiful steakhouse, and the smell was unbelievable. She says, that smells great. And I thought, well, okay then. So we walked past it one more time, right? So I says to Cheryl, I tell you what I'll do. I'll paint the living room sapphire blue. You know what she said to me? I don't care what colour you paint it, as long as it matches my ring. So there you go. So I married this little girl. I had already been to AA. I came to AA when I was 20. And people say all the time there was lots of young people there. There was tons of young people there. I just didn't like them. This guy says to me, Martin, do you want to go bowling? I said, bowling? Do you drink when you go to the bowling? No, then I don't want to go bowling. You see, I didn't want to stop drinking. I wanted what I got from the drink at the start. I wanted relief. There came a point in my drinking where it no longer gave me any relief. That was gone. That was gone. The relief was gone. And I was now drinking because I had to drink. And so what happens is I went, and there was a Scottish guy spoke. And in reflection and through inventory, when he was speaking, I thought I was a clairvoyant, because what it really was identification. I had never heard anybody talk about their alcoholism the way Bill Marshall did. He talked about it in such a fashion. I thought, wow, how does he know that? He knows that because he lived that. That's how. And then he came up to me and after me and he says, well, how are you doing, Martin? I said, no bad. He says, oh, you're from Scotland? I said, yes, so was he. He says, Martin, do you want what we've got? I said, no. I says, I don't care what you've got, Bill. I just don't want what I've got. I says, I don't really want to stop drinking. I just want to stop being in trouble. And so I stopped being in trouble for 2 nights. And I come back before I get married to Cheryl. I'm going to be sober for the wedding. And I come back to AA. And that doesn't work. And 11 months later, we have Veronica, my oldest daughter. And I'm going to get sober for her. And that doesn't work. And at 23, I come back and I make a mistake at 23. I don't make many mistakes, but when I do, they're monumental. I get into this meeting and this little Irish guy comes up to me and he worked with my brother. He says to me, and I look like my brother. He says to me, you Harry's brother? I said, yes. He said, how come he's a nice guy and you're a jerk? Full of the love and tolerance of Alcoholics Anonymous, of course. I said, what do you mean? He says, oh, Harry comes in and tells us about you almost every Monday. He says, you've stopped me getting drunk twice, kid. I says, yeah. And he does what, if you're new tonight, get up to somebody and get their phone number. What he done was he says, listen, and he got this little card they used to give out where I came from, and he wrote his name on it, and his address, his dry date, and his phone number, and he put 2 dimes in little slits and he folded it over and he says, here, the next time you get into trouble, give me a call. I says, what do you mean the next time? I'm 28 days sober. I'm cured. And he looked me up and down and he said, listen, fatso. Full of the love and tolerance again, of course, right? If I hung you up by the ankles in a smokehouse, you wouldn't be cured in 28 days. I didn't get drunk again. And I came at 24 in legal trouble. Because eventually, I don't know much about the women, but eventually the guys, or most of the guys, end up some kind of legal trouble. And I was always in trouble. Today, I'd have got deported. I would have had to come to America then. Just joking. So what happens is, I come at 24. It doesn't work again. And Cheryl's mum, who's a single mum, buys a house across the road from her so that Cheryl and Veronica can live there, because I can't look after them. I make more money in one day than my mother-in-law does in a week, and she's running 2 houses. It's the way I am. I want to get home with the money, and I just never seem, because I'm a barroom drinker. I mean, I could never understand guys saying, well, I had 4 bottles of beer in the house watching the hockey. Oh, that's lovely. I don't understand that stuff, you know. 25. Trying to get sober. And this is how it happens. My grandfather died. My dad had been in the Navy for 30 years. And I thought my grandfather was my dad when I was a wee boy, because he was there all the time. And my dad was just a guy that turned up in the uniform. That's what I thought. And he's lying in his deathbed. I've got 56 full cousins. And he says to my mum, I would like Martin to carry the box. 57 grandchildren, and I'm his favourite, and he takes his watch off and he gives it to my mum, and he says, you give that to Martin. I didn't get that till I was about 5 years sober, so my mum made sure I wasn't going to sell it. But anyway, from 23 to 25, I'm sort of intermittently living on Skid Row. Not like these kids who are living today, but I mean on Skid Row, where it was just men, and it was horrible. And we're living in the Stewart Street rail yards in the weeds. And you leave there no later than 5 after 6, because at 6 o'clock, the CN police change shifts and they let the dogs out for a run. And the dogs usually have a run at us. And so you have to leave. And I come home to my house and it's empty. And I look across the road to my mother-in-law's house. I haven't been in there for 2 years. I'm not allowed in there. The furniture's all gone. Cheryl's gone. Veronica's gone. I go over and I don't know where I get the strength. I don't know where I get the courage. I think, you know that prayer, footprints in the sand? You know when they say, oh, Jesus, I turned around and there was only one set of footprints? My version of that is, I turned around and I said, Jesus, there was only one footprint. He says, yes, my son. The other one was in your ass, kicking you into AA. Because I wasn't going to come here easy. That wasn't going to be easy for me. And I chap that door and the mother-in-law opens and she says, come in. She says, you have to call your mother. Okay? And she just, and it's my ma. And my mum says to me, Martin, your pa, that's what we call my grandfather, your pa died. I've sent you everything we've got, £1,000. That time, $2,384.20 Canadian. You need to come home. And I should have went and got an airplane ticket and a suit and went home. But the bank was next to the Jockey Club. And in June the 25th, 1983, I went in for 1 bottle of beer to think about it. And I didn't wake up until July the 15th. I don't know how you black out. And I hear people say all the time, oh, I'm a blackout drinker. Be careful. I've seen some horrible stuff happen to people who are in blackouts. Some horrible stuff. Blacking out and passing out are 2 different things. I've ended up in countries other than Canada, blacked out and not knowing how I got there. I wake up July the 15th, and I don't know where to get the strength to go back. And I'll tell you what I think really happened. I think with the last vestige of decency I had left in me, my Veronica's 2.5, almost 3 now. And I know Cheryl should have better than me. Cheryl should have somebody who loves her. I'm just no capable. The truth is, I'm just no good. Because you see, this allergy has now turned into a full-blown obsession and craving. I need to drink. My life is 20 minutes between drinks. That's how I live. I don't sleep anymore. I pass out and then I get up and I drink again. I'm young. I'm bloated. My liver's distended. I'm bleeding through every orifice in my body. I'm dying on my feet. I don't know that. I can't see that. Like that young lady said, she just couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. Everybody else can see it. And by the time I'm 25, the doors are starting to close. My sister closed the door. My brother closed the door. I don't have any friends that I had before. Nobody. I've got nobody. I've got Cheryl and Veronica, I think, and Mama. And I chap the door and my mother-in-law says, oh, come in. She says, you have to call your mother. I'm not going to call Mama. I know what I've done. I've robbed my mum and dad, but that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is I've disrespected them. At my mother's time in need, I've turned my back and stole her money. What kind of person does that? You know, I hear people get over that easy. I couldn't lift my head for 2 years. Every time I thought about that, what I'd done to my mum and dad. What kind of person does that? My mother-in-law says, call your mother. I says, yeah. I'm never going to call my mother, ever. And my mother-in-law picks the phone up and dials straight through to Scotland. She was getting good at it, you know. And it's my ma. And I can hear the pain dripping off my mum's voice because she just lost her dad. Now she thinks she's going to lose me. And she's dying. And I don't know where she gets the courage, but she says this to me. And I thought she could never say this to me. She says, Martin, I don't know what we done wrong. I don't know where we went wrong, but don't you come here. Don't write here. Don't phone here till you've done something with your life. And she hung up. I've been stabbed 5 times. It's nothing like that. That was the worst. And I look at Cheryl and she's pregnant with my Elizabeth. And I said, Cheryl, she says, Martin, I'll get plans, but you're not in them. We're done. And I don't know how women get scared, but I know how men get scared. When a man gets scared, he usually gets angry so he can control the room. I couldn't even get angry. I was terrified. And I look at my Veronica. She's 2.5, nearly 3. And I say to Cheryl, can I take Veronica for candies? She says, sure you can, Martin. She knows I love this child. I just can't do it consistently. And I get that baby. And that's it. And I know that that's it. And I'm walking up that little street with this baby. And I look down at her and she says to me, Dad. I says, what? She says, I still love you. And she was the only person in the world who did. That's what it's come to for me. We stood at the turning point. We asked for his care and protection with complete abandon, which means is we don't care what the consequences are. If I'm going to die, then at least this baby and Cheryl and the new baby will have a better life. Bill Wilson says how dark it is before the dawn. I go and get drunk. That's not my last drunk. I take that baby home and I go and get drunk until August the 1st, and I wake up in the Stewart Street rail yards. And if you ever woke up and you don't want to wake up, you want to get back to sleep, you don't have the courage to kill yourself because you're gutless, but you don't want to wake up because you know what's coming. And it's not the light at the end of the tunnel. It's a train that's got a light on it and it's going to run right over the top of you. And I have to get up. And see that little Irish guy, I call him. And he comes and gets me. He didn't tell me where the detox was, because that's not a 12-step call. That's information. And he didn't come and drive me to the detox, because that's not a 12-step call. That's a cab ride. He came and got me in a 1962 Park Lane car. And it wasn't until after I realized I'm still standing in the same clothes I was in June. And this is August the 1st. And he walks away around that big, long convertible, and he opens the door and he says, get in, son. And it's the first time anybody showed me a courtesy in 2 years, because where I come from, you show courtesy, I'm going to take advantage. That's just how it is. And he looks at me and he says to me, my God, son, what's happened to you? The last time he had seen me, I weighed 175 pounds. I was boxing. I was doing great. Now I weigh 275 pounds. I've got more chins than I got in the Hong Kong phone book. He says to me, what happened to you? And I tell him what it says in the book. In the book it says, we have no more idea than you do. my excuses, although some of them quite plausible, really don't hold any water. And I say to him, I don't know, Jimmy. He said, well, you're going to the detox. And I went to the detox, and he came back that night, and the next 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 night, and he looked after me. And there was none of this, well, you're going to be all right, son. It'll be okay. He taught me how to meditate with one word. He looked at me straight in the eye and he said, shut up. Okay. And I never said a word for 10 months. We'd go to meetings and he would say this, my name's Jimmy, I'm an alcoholic, blah, 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 because I ever heard it. And I'm thinking what I'm going to say, because I'm great, right? And then he say, his name's Martin, he's an alcoholic, happy to be here, see you next week. But he let me do setting the group up. He let me take it down. He gave me the key. And you know what he done? He gave me trust and responsibility, one fell swoop. And I'm going to tell you something about the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're sitting out here tonight and you haven't tried them, you're a fool. You're a fool. It's like going to the circus and just watching the parade and not even going in to see the show. Because the steps of the show, they really are. So I'm going to tell you this. Jimmy says to me, Martin, you have to go through the steps. I said, Jimmy, I don't want to go through the steps. A Protestant wrote them. That's a pretty good excuse. I bet you haven't really heard that one. He says, I don't care who wrote them, you're going through them. So I said to him, when do we start? He says, oh no, but you're too smart for me, Martin. Too smart for me. He said, I would kill you. I really would. He says, I'm going to take you to Akron, Ohio, to meet a Scottish guy called John Leach. And John was a big red-faced Scots guy whose sister was related to Henrietta Seiberling, incidentally. And what happens, I go and meet John, and John takes me in and gives me what's called a qualifying interview. Could you imagine if you'd done that today? People just turn up and say, well, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and I want you to change this and I want that changed and I don't like the way you talk to me, so you have to stop that. John took me and sat and he came out and he said to Jimmy, I couldn't take that kid through the steps. He says, why not? He says, he's nuts. I'd kill him. Jimmy, I would kill him. And Jimmy says to him, I know how you feel. I know exactly how you feel. And I thought, well, I'll have to do the steps myself and then I'll teach everybody, right? Listen, I'm not the only one who thought that. There's tons of people doing it. See, if you're new, see this here. This should be shaped like a key, because this is the key to your new life. But I'm going to give you a tip. See the black bits? Read them. Don't read the white bits in between. Don't tell me what you think Bill Wilson thought. Bill Wilson was in therapy his whole life. If you tell me what he thought, you need to go to therapy too. So what happens is, I thought, I'll have to do the steps myself. And this guy walks out. He says, hi, I'm Ed. I'll take you through the steps. This guy's name was Ed Andy. Ed got sober in January 1939. No big book for Ed. Those guys didn't get sober with the steps of the big book. They get sober and got the principles into their life with the 5 directions of the Oxford group and the 4 absolutes. Because Ed Andy told me this. It's not about being knowledgeable. He says, I get a feeling you've read this book before. I read that book in The Palace for the Peculiar. You know, the one with the padded rooms, you just get the locks on the one side. And I'd read it, I'd understood it. It meant nothing until I could identify with it. Until there was a spiritual connection with the big book, it meant nothing. It was an exercise in futility. It wasn't until I got the level of desperation, which I later found out was a gift, that started to make sense. He said, this is how it's going to work. You're going to come down here for the next 14 weeks to Westlake, Ohio. I says, look, Ed, I live in Hamilton, Ontario. That's 4 hours away. He says, we used to get the bus to go and see Wilson. You come here for the next 14 weeks, you miss 1 week, don't come back. Can you imagine talking like that today? I think we need to talk like that today. We need to give these young people what we got. I'm telling you, see, when I came, half of the people who came got sober. That's not the case today because everybody thinks they're special. You know that slogan, keep it simple. It's a simple program for complicated people. You wish. It's a simple program for simple people who think they're complicated. And what the steps do is take away the complications. Now, I'm not going to give you a dissertation on the steps, but I'm going to tell you this. I went into the steps a boy, and I came out a man. That's my story on the steps. That I'd done them as well as I could possibly do them, and I've done them tons of times since. I've taken tons of guys through the book, and the 12 and 12 as well. You see, I believe Bill Wilson wrote the big book when he was inspired by God. And he wrote the 12 and 12 when he was experienced. That's what I believe. And so I think that Alcoholics Anonymous is a complete package. Wilson says in the book, we are sure we know but a little. So what's the 12 and 12 in AA comes of age? Get into them too. Don't limit yourself. Sky's the limit in here. You can be what you want to be. And my life changed. I owed so much money. Like, bankruptcy would have been so easy. It's even got a ring to it, bankruptcy. But so does character building. And Jimmy says, you're a high earner. You're going to pay all that money off. It took us 5 years. And we paid it off. And it built character. It built character. I was able to do for my mum and dad what my brother done. I said to the golden boy, Harry, what do you do for mum and dad? Well, I do this and that. Well, that's what I'll do. That's what I'll do. Everything I've done for my mum and dad, I've done for my mother-in-law. Everything. I've had a good life. What a life. You know, I can't tell you enough about what a good life. I got to be a delegate to New York one time. I met a guy from this town called Gary, who was a phenomenal guy, but he was pretty militant, you know. And I was just as militant as him. And we got marginalized for it. Because I'm going to tell you what I think. In the 12 and 12, it says on the 5th edition, it's well to do one thing supremely well, which is better than anybody else, than many badly. And we're at the stage where we're doing many badly. We have people in here who think they can help anybody. Oh, it doesn't matter, it says anyone, anywhere. No, it doesn't. It's an encapsulated AA saying. It's for alcoholics. When any alcoholic reaches out for help, we can help them. We can't help anybody. We just can't. To think otherwise means that our egos are out of control. And so for me, I've done the best I can in Alcoholics Anonymous with what I've been given, and it's just got better. When I got to be the delegate, I just couldn't believe the enormity of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I'm going to tell you something, guys. I believe that when our General Service Board let another fellowship use our big book as their primary piece of literature, they sentenced people to die. I think they made a decision based on business as opposed to based on spirituality. And I know that sounds like a heresy, but that's what I believe. And when the girl was reading you can have your own opinion, that's my opinion. I think that alcoholics are far better helping alcoholics, and other people are far better helping other people, because I don't identify with other people. I just don't. And the truth is, they don't identify with me. They're just so desperate they say they do just to be here. You know, so I'm going to tell you 2 stories and I'm going to sit down. I loved Mama, you know, and I'm no, like my brother was a mommy's boy. He loved his mum. But not so much me. Not so much, but gosh, I loved her. I'd write twice a week. I'd phone twice a week and I'd write once a week. And if I got a job in Venezuela or in the islands or Germany, I'd say, look, this is part of the deal. I have to be able to make 2 phone calls to Scotland to my mum every week or I can't come. Okay. And I'd call her Wednesdays and Saturdays. I called for the soccer results. How does Celtic? Right. And I'd write letters to her. Dear Mum, my mum wanted to know everything about us except our sex life. Dear Mum, I am working in Venezuela this week. Incidentally, I have been made the Secretary-Treasurer of the Wayside Discussion Group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Hamilton, Ontario. Which to us is just right. But my mum gets that letter. See, my mum used to go out with her sisters and her cousins and her friends on a Wednesday afternoon for a high tea, you know, the cream cakes and tea, right? And they say, how's your family doing? Oh, Margaret's got a big house in Toronto. Annette's driving a brand new Mercedes. Harry's got 2 new cars. How's Martin? Well, he's in jail in Michigan this week. So eventually they stopped talking about us because we shamed them. But my aunt tells me at my mum's funeral, she brings in a letter and she says to me, shush. Dear Mum, I am the Secretary-Treasurer of the Wayside Discussion Group. That's my Martin. He's high up in the AA. High up. So when my mum, not the big book, but the good book says a man's allotment is 70 plus 10. When my mum was 70, I sent her flowers. I sent her roses. And it was a Wednesday, so it was my day to call. And I said, oh, happy birthday, Mum. She says, oh, Martin, those flowers came. I've never had flowers like that before. Because we always had more wheat than we did chick. I said, that's okay, Ma. She says, however, when I put them roses out, white roses out, to cut them and put them in a vase, there was only 11 of them. I said, Mum, take your phone over to the mirror. And my mother goes over to the mirror. I said to her, there's the 12th rose. I love you. That's how this works. Our code is love and tolerance. The rest is just knowledge. The rest is just knowledge. I'll finish with this. I don't sponsor women, and I'll tell you why. I think a woman's sex conduct comes from a different place than a man's. And when it comes to the 5th step, she should really do it with another woman. That's my belief, and I'll tell you why I do that. I sponsored a girl who had been a beauty queen, and she told me her sex life. And I says to her, could you repeat that? No, just joking. I think a woman's far safer with another woman, but of course there's exceptions, and I have lots of women friends. Lots of women friends. Like the woman that was here a few months ago, Mary J., is a big buddy of mine. Me and Mary are real close. We talk every single week, every week without fail for over 30 years. So what happens, I'm in the meeting one night and this big girl comes and she's got a patch in her back, she's got a Harley outside. Oh God. I seen her putting a cigarette out in a woman's arm. I thought, oh my God. And she must have been talking to my dad because she says, hey, come here you, I want to talk to you. She said, would you sponsor me? And I said to her, let me think about it. That's AA for no. I went and asked 6 women, and this woman says to me, Martin, she terrifies me. I said, I know how you feel, but somebody's got to sponsor her. So I went home to Mrs. Al-Anon, and I said to Cheryl, if I take this girl on, will you take her through the 5th step in Al-Anon? Because the steps are the same. She says, sure. I says, I want to know the bones of it, but know the incidentals. I don't want to know. She says, sure. And that big girl, and she started, the big stuff went off. Sold a Harley, sold the weapons of mass destruction, if you will. And under all that, there was this big, lovely girl just waiting to get out. And she joined my group, and we made her the GSR. If you've not tried service, don't knock it. Don't knock it if you've not tried it. Go try it, and if you don't like it, you found out it's not for you. It's not for everybody, but give it a try. So Big Yvonne tries it. And my door goes one night, and I open the door, and there's a big one standing with a face like stone. I says, yeah, what is it? She says, I was at the GSR meeting tonight. I says, yeah, what's wrong? The treasurer was stealing the money. I said, that guy's got 5 kids. Did he need groceries or something? She says, I don't know. I choked him. I says, you did what? She says, I choked him. Not very ladylike. She says, it took 5 men to get me off of him. One of them was Brother Terence at the mission. Oh, by the way, do you know anywhere else we can have the GSR meetings? Because Terence says we've not to come back. And I said to her, can't act like that. And I'm going to tell you something, that girl had no friends, no real friends. She knew a lot of people, but she had no real friends. She had me and Cheryl. And I'm about to shut the door in her face. You can be out there with no friends and survive as long as you've got that. But you can't be in here and have no friends. It's just too hard. And that girl started to cry. I thought that girl would never cry. And she says, Martin, I just don't have it all together. I'm going to tell you something. Nobody does. Nobody does. I get to do this all the time. I meet a lot of people. Some of them I wouldn't let in my car. I'm going to tell you about people in this room. There's not a single person in this room that hasn't done something they're ashamed of. Not one person. That's the human condition. That's how we are. We're all broken. I just don't have it all together, she says. I says, I know you don't. But you know what I think God's plan for the fellowship is? You see, I think the spiritual program is really important, but the fellowship's important too. And you see, God has got his hand in both of them, because God gave us this. And I get this feeling we might be trying to hand him it back, and he's not taking it. You know? Because there was guys like Gary and Howard Lowry from New Orleans that said, no, this is ours. And so what I think is, no, nobody's got it all together. But see, when we're all together, we've got it. Thanks for having me, Patrick.
Thank you so much, Martin. That was great. We will now close the meeting with the we version of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant us serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference.